Hi, and welcome to the And1 Podcast. I am your host, Alex West, and today I'm joined by Jake Paynting of Dunking with the Wolves in the 94 Feet Report. We talk about all things Minnesota Timberwolves, their defensive woes, Karl-Anthony Towns' greatness, Jimmy Butler's impact on both ends of the floor, and then we talk about Australian basketball, just how it's grown in Australia, how the NBA has grown, and how many players that Australia is putting into the league. So it was really interesting. I was glad to be a part of it. It was super fun and super informative, and I hope that you learned as much from it as I did. Anyway, Brent, take us away. I'm joined today by my guest, Jake Paynting, all the way from Australia. Jake, how are you, sir?
Not bad, mate. Yourself?
I can't complain. This is a historic moment for the And1 Podcast. You're the first international guest we've ever had on the show, so we're glad you're here.
Yes, I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, like who you are, where do you write, what do you do, who are you a fan of? Because I think that's the most interesting part of that story.
Yeah, like you said, I go for Minnesota. I'm a Minnesota Timberwolves fan, so I've been a Timberwolves fan since I was 8 years old. I went for the Timberwolves because they were beating the New Jersey Nets, who was my brother's team, and KG had about 40 at the time. So I was like, this is the team for me. I don't want to go for my brother's team, so I'll go for the opposite.
There you go.
And I'm a sports writer. I write for the 94 Foot Report, which you know about, which is 94feetreport.com. And then I write for Dunking with the Wolves, which is a Timberwolves outlet, and that's dunkingwiththewolves.com, and my Twitter handle's at Jake Paynting, so it's pretty simple.
Pretty simple. And so let's jump in and talk about your Timberwolves. It's been a big summer of changes. It's a radically different roster than they had last season. And
Definitely.
I think the hopes have been pretty high. I mean, the season hasn't quite started, 3-3, not quite where you want to be. But Jimmy Butler, Andrew Wiggins, Karl-Anthony Towns, I think there's a lot expected of this team, and maybe even some people think there might be a home playoff series in store. Are these reasonable expectations for this roster, or is there going to need more time to grow into what they can be?
I think it's half reasonable. I think everyone in Minnesota and every Minnesota fan's definitely expecting playoffs. It's been so long, 13 years since we've made the playoffs, so everyone's expecting playoffs. At the home final, maybe. I think they're going to definitely need to be better on defense. They'll need to step up and lead, like your Wiggins and your Karl-Anthony Towns. It can't just be Jimmy Butler. I don't think he can be the leader. I think all three of the stars need to be leaders if this team's going to be a 4 seed or a 3 seed.
I have had some sort of misgivings about this because Towns has all the tools to be a good defender. Wiggins has the tools to be a good defender. And I think that's, the immediate pressing question about this team is, on paper, it looks like you have good defenders. I mean, I know that, Wiggins has been maligned as a defender for his time in the league, but when he came out of Kansas, people thought he could defend really well. And this team is just not defending. What's going on?
Yeah, well, Wiggins, I guess all Minnesota fans thought that Wiggins would come in as a better defender than an offensive player. And you look at that now and you're like, how did people even think that? Because he drops 20 in his sleep and he struggles to stay on defense with anyone. But I think they're both definitely got the tools, like you said, and I think Cat especially, it's more awareness and communication, things that he'll learn, especially playing with Tibbs, things that he just needs a bit more time to pick up on. I think staying connected on the roller, on the pick and roll. Right. I think they're all things that he struggles with. Like Steven Adams in OKC took him to school both times, just pick and rolls, hard rolls, and Towns just kind of gets stuck in the middle.
Yeah, it's really kind of bizarre to me because Towns has such a big body, has such a big wingspan, and it feels like he could stay connected to guys. But like you said, particularly Steven Adams is such a good example of a guy who rolls hard to the rim and makes life really hard for Karl-Anthony Towns. And that is seemingly, and I haven't watched as much Minnesota as probably you have, but seemingly that's one of the big issues is Towns and Wiggins can't stay attached to people.
Yeah, it's definitely, and I think one-on-one they're both pretty good defenders when they're put in them one-on-one situations, especially Wiggins one-on-one on the perimeter does a good job, but it's ball watching, and staying attached to your man when they don't have the ball, that I think both of them struggle with a bit. They kind of just tend to watch the ball instead of playing that really technical team defense.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think this is a result of a failing of the system, of like Tom Thibodeau's system failure, or do you think this is a fact that the players are still a little young and still sort of growing into play and defense on a team that's been pretty bad for their entire tenure there?
Yeah, I think it's more that they've been pretty bad the whole time, and they're still trying to figure out what it takes to be a good defensive team. I think with Butler there, I think Tibbs can yell at them as much as, he can yell at anyone, and I don't think it's going to get through to them until they consistently start to do it and see what happens when they do it.
Right.
And see the wins that it produces. And I think Butler, you can see Butler out on the court, he's yelling at everyone as much as Tibbs is. So I think he's the type of player who would get it through to them that, like, look what I do and look how it works.
Yeah, he's certainly the guy who has taken on the leadership role. I mean, a lot of his numbers have taken a little bit of a step back from what he was in Chicago. Even his efficiency and usage numbers are not what they have been, particularly compare this season to last season, where his usage rate was like 26, and now he's down to like 19. But he certainly seems to be an important force to the growth of this team. How much emphasis do you place on Jimmy Butler? Like, is this kind of his team to lead, even though he's not the face of the franchise?
Yeah, I think so. I think you could tell when he missed those 2 games how much the team missed him, even though they'd only been playing with him for 3 or 4 games. I think he does the dirty work, he's going to dive on the loose balls, he's going to yell at people who don't play defense properly, he's not going to let anything slip. So I think that kind of keeps everyone else on their game, even if he only is, scoring his 15 points and 5 rebounds, 5 assists. He's going to be that kind of Draymond Green almost that glues your whole team together.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not coincidental, I don't think, that the 2 games that he missed were 2 particularly bad losses. Although Detroit is a much improved team, and I don't want to say that too loud because we do have some Detroit Pistons fans, so I don't want to run them down too much, but the games that Butler missed were losses to Indiana and losses to Detroit, and I don't think that's coincidental. I think you're pointing at, the exact right thing is he's missed 2 games. They're 2 bad losses to Eastern Conference teams, but then when he does play, they're 3-1 with 2 wins against Oklahoma City, and it's, it looks like a much more cohesive team than what they are without him.
Yeah, definitely. I think both the games against the Indiana and Pistons game, they both looked, I think, like they weren't ready to play without Butler, even though, like I said before, he's only been there for, this season.
Right.
But I think they've kind of had gotten used to, I guess, almost leaning on Butler to do a bit of the dirty work. And I think it's something they need to snap out of, because Wiggins and Towns, they both need to be able to do the dirty work just as much as Butler.
Yeah, and let's get into Karl-Anthony Towns for a minute. Towns is such a transcendent player. Through the game last night, he's averaging 26.2 points per game, 12.5 rebounds. He's just looked incredibly impressive for such a young guy. Outside of defense, which, we've talked about sort of what his misgivings are on the defensive end. Is there more he can do? I mean, besides playing defense, it's easy to say play defense, protect the rim, but what more can he do beyond what he is doing to help this team win?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's easy to just say play defense, and you expect people to just go out and play defense and all of a sudden become world beaters at it. But I think his main thing is communication. I think that's just talking more. It's just letting people know that they're in the wrong position, or that, like, I'm in the wrong position, I need you to switch for me and stuff like that. And I think even on offense, he's very good on offense, as people know. Like, he's got, the 3-point shot, the mid-range jumpers money, the inside, he's got hooks with both hands and pump fakes. But I think he could probably be, I don't know, sometimes on offense he strikes me as a bit youthful.
Uh-huh.
He tries to dribble drive from the top and gets called for a charge when it's just not there. Like, I think as he kind of matures into the NBA, I think he's going to be legitimately unstoppable on offense.
Yeah, because he's only 22 years old. I mean, this is what we're seeing out of a kid who's just turned. Well, he's about to turn 22 in November, so he's really 21 right now.
Yeah, so I think youthfulness when you're 21 and averaging over 25 points a game already is a pretty good floor to have.
Yeah, and honestly, like I will lump defense in there as well. Guys. Paul Pierce is one of my all-time favorite players, and when Paul Pierce, who became one of the great defenders for that big three Boston Celtics team, early in his career, he was a terrible defender. I mean, he gambled, he risked everything, and he was just bad. And people always wondered, like, well, is this just part of his game, or is he going to grow into it? So I think certainly if you're talking about defense with a guy who's 21 years old, there's plenty of room to grow and to, like you said, understand how to communicate and direct others to play better defense. I think that's something that's well within his wheelhouse.
Yeah, I think he definitely will get it. There's a lot of people who say the same thing that you were just saying, like, will he ever get it? Or will Tibbs ever be able to get through to him? And I think he's 21 years old. Like, the guy's been in the league for not even 3 seasons, and people kind of expect him to be that elite defender. I think it's definitely going to take him some time.
Yeah, he's played 168 games. I mean, it's not, it's not a lot.
Yeah, and with Tom Thibodeau, like, I don't think you can ever get yelled at that much about defense and not think about defense.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Tibbs does. He will hound you about playing defense.
Like, you see the like the press conferences, and Towns scores 40 points, and he's like, yeah, but he could have played better defense.
and that's Tibbs is like old school coach. He's never impressed with what you did. It's what you can do better every single night. But I mean, you're hitting on all the things that I think people think about Towns, and I think there's just so much room for growth with this guy. But let's flip over and talk about the other young guy on the team. Let's talk about Andrew Wiggins for a second. He's seen some slight reduction in his score and some his PER, his usage, that kind of stuff. But he seems to be developing into a little bit more mature player. Early on in his career, it looked like he was projected to be a superstar. He's a high pick in the draft, that kind of thing. But it definitely doesn't look like he's projected quite that high anymore. Is he still on track to be a star in this league, though?
I think he was always slightly overrated, I guess, on his star potential. I think just because of it's all, I don't know, I guess because he was compared to LeBron when he was younger, it's always kind of been a bit overstated. But I think he'll be a very good second option or a really, really good third option on a good team. I don't know if he'll ever be the best player on a really good team just because he doesn't get the assist numbers or the rebounds. He has games where he shoots at low percentages because he's a little bit hot and cold. And I think he's definitely becoming more mature. This year we've seen him shoot a lot less long mid-ranges and turn those into threes, which he's hitting. And a lot less kind of pull-up jumpers that are silly shots.
Right. And that's the maturity.
That's what you're talking about with that maturity, and it's more learning to be a really good second option or third option, seeing it, depending on where you see him.
And he's been a really effective shooter. He's shooting 38% from three. He's shooting 52% from the floor. But I think one of the big concerns this season, or at least that I've seen him miss a few free throws here and there. He's only a 53% free throw shooter. And granted, small sample size and all that. But this is a guy who shot like 75% for his career. Is this a concerning thing?
It is, because it's a small sample size, but it's not a small sample size every game. I mean, he's going to the line probably 6 to 10 times a game and shooting 50%. This week he shot 44%. So it's not like it's gotten better throughout the season. It's gotten worse. But I'd be very surprised if it didn't regress back to the mean, because he shot 75% on a high usage for his first 2 years. So, but yeah, it's definitely strange, especially when you're going to the rim and drawing fouls so often. I guess you need to convert the free throws.
Well, and all good scorers go through that. Like something that's LeBron has struggled with in his career. Carmelo went through a phase where he wasn't a great free throw shooter. So I think it's something that you grow and overcome,
Yeah, and I've seen him putting in work after practices, so it's not like they don't know kind of that it's a problem, and I'm sure, like I said, he'll regress back to the mean eventually.
Yeah, and I think the other big concern, free throws on the offensive end, because his shooting's been great, but I think the number on the defensive end is just sort of alarming to people that he's got 117 defensive rating. Guys tend to shoot really well against him. What's Andrew Wiggins got to do to be that capable defender that it looked like he could be coming out of Kansas?
I think, like we said before, I think off the ball he needs to improve. I think he's constantly a step late on defense just because he's ball watching, and that one step, that's all NBA players need to burn you.
For sure.
And then on like one-on-one, he's not bad. He's still skinny, which hurts him. People like to take him into the post and just bully him, and he can't really do much about that, especially when Towns isn't the elite like defender backing you up.
Right.
They kind of back in Wiggins, and they know Towns isn't going to come and swat him.
Yeah, Towns has never never been a great rim protector, which I think hurts them because they tend to play those small lineups where it's Teague, Butler, Wiggins, Gibson, and Towns. So Towns is your quote unquote rim protector, but he's not a Rudy Gobert, he's not a DeAndre Jordan.
No, he has the athleticism to jump and block shots, but his awareness and timing definitely isn't on the level of some of them really good shot blockers, and I think that does hurt. Because Taj Gibson's going to play really good defense, but he's not going to swat shots away at the rim.
No, he's a shorter guy. He's only about 6'9", so he's not going to be a rim protector.
Yeah. But he definitely, Gibson definitely brings the toughness that this team needs, and it definitely lets Towns know where to be more often. I think when he was playing with just Jeng as his power forward, they'll both get lost at times. We see that Taj Gibson's really good with the communication. And that really helps Towns on where to be. I think that OKC game, the second one, Towns had 4 blocks. And that was kind of I think that was almost not the turning point, but the time where he thought, I can play good D. Like Steven Adams might roll on him hard, but when it was one-on-one, Towns really locked him down. And a lot of the veterans on the team were really impressed, in the press conferences with Towns' effort on defense. And
he also had 33 points and 19 rebounds in that game. So it was, a pretty good stat line.
Yeah, just to add in those little stats here and there.
Yeah, exactly. He was just putting up a nice little stat line. So Jimmy Butler's only appeared, he's missed 2 games, which we talked about, and his numbers have taken a little bit of a dip. Is something going on with him, physically that's sort of making him play this way, or do you think he's just in an adjustment period like everyone else is?
I think it's more the adjustment. The injury was a upper respiratory infection, so he was just sick, bit of a chest infection. Even before that OKC game, he said he was still full of mucus, full of snot, and he came out and had, I think, 23, 7 and 5. So
it's a pretty good game.
So I think it's more of the adjustment. I think everyone, Jeff Teague included, you can tell they're not playing at their best. They're trying to figure out how to play with a Wiggins and a Towns, players who are going to take 15 to 20 shots off you every game.
Yeah,
and
that's sort of
still be effective.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead.
No, you're
okay. Right. That sort of led me into my next point, because what I wanted to say was, you're watching this team a lot, and I sort of have the outside perspective on it, but this roster does not seem to be a complete roster to me. Do you think they need to make a big move? They don't really have the floor spacing that I'd like to see a team competitive in the West have, and I don't really think Jeff Teague is the point guard for this group. I don't know. It just seems like an incomplete roster to me. What is your take on that?
I agree. I think they're definitely slightly incomplete. I think they definitely need a 3-point shooter. In the summer, they tried to sign and trade with CJ Miles.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a Cole Aldridge and a first that Indiana wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And they wouldn't end up giving away the first, so that kind of put that to bed. But there was a bit of chatter about Jarrett Dudley earlier at the start of this season, a few weeks ago. So I think they're definitely looking around for a 3-point shooter. I think they know that bench 3-point shooter, someone who can play 15 to 20 minutes a night and just be reliable sitting outside 3,
Those are two interesting. Those are two interesting names that you named. C.J. Miles playing for the Indiana Pacers, Jared Dudley playing for the Phoenix Suns. Both probably will be available. I would think if for the right price. I mean, I don't see why Indiana wouldn't take a first. I mean, C.J. Miles playing for Toronto.
He played for Indiana last season.
Yeah.
Toronto this year.
Yeah, that's okay. So he's probably not available, but Jared Dudley will probably be available.
Yeah, Dudley will be, I think. Yeah, especially for Phoenix. They've got a lot of young wings as well. I think there's no point them playing Jared Dudley.
So you think that's the big issue for them is to add another wing who can space the floor a little bit more?
Yeah, I think Shabazz Muhammad off the bench is probably not the best player for them. I think he can score, but it's in a very isolation type, layups at the ring, foul shots.
Right.
That's the way he wants to play, where I think you'd rather the ball be moving, and Jamal Crawford is your go-to guy off the bench. You don't need another elite scorer off the bench or someone who's going to have the ball in his hands for 20 seconds at the shot clock. You need a guy who can space the floor and come on and play with the first unit as well and knock down threes.
Yeah, for sure. They just don't have that guy on the bench right now. And the other thing that I kind of worry about is their big man rotation. Outside of Towns, you have you have Gibson, and then you have Jing. But outside of that, you don't really have a consistent big man on the roster who's going to give you quality minutes like you need.
Yeah. There's Cole Aldrich, who isn't going to play any minutes, and then Justin Patton, who's the rookie, who has a broken metatarsal in his foot. So he won't be back for, I think, I heard Tibbs say today that he's doing one-on-ones, just started doing one-on-ones, so I'd say he wouldn't be back for another 2 months either, probably.
He could certainly be a really good player for them. He was really good at Creighton last year and helped space the floor. I mean, there could be a place in the rotation for Justin Patton, certainly.
Yeah, I think if he was healthy, if he was healthy now, he'd probably be pushing for minutes because there is that hole in the big man rotation, and Jen can play the power forward or the center, but he's not going to really change the game at either of those positions.
He was a 53% three-point shooter in a small sample size. I mean, he didn't shoot a ton of threes last year at Creighton, but he certainly displayed range within his capability to score like that. And I think it'll be interesting when he gets back. I mean, who knows by the time January rolls around and he's playing minutes how things will have changed. But if the roster is the way it is now, I could definitely see Justin Patton, getting slotted in there and filling in some minutes at center or at power forward.
Yeah, same. And I think with the new Iowa Wolves, the G League team, they definitely it gives him a place to kind of play a few weeks and see if he is ready for that next step into NBA.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, this is their first year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I think they were the Iowa Energy last year. Yeah, so Wolves have taken over them, and that gives a really good basis, I think, for your younger players to go and play, especially your first-round draft picks that kind of don't fit in immediately.
And your rehab guys, I mean, so he sort of fits into both of those things, guys coming back on injury. We saw that Tony Parker might play in a G League game or two before it's all said and done.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Strange.
What do you really think? Let's get down to brass tacks for a second. Let's talk about it. What do you think is a realistic goal for the Wolves right now? You said 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6 seed. I like to think probably like 48 to 50 wins is a pretty good number. Is that the number you still have circled 6 games in?
Yeah, I think I had that around at the start of the year, and I don't think much has changed. I think it's been a bit of a confusing start. I mean, when you beat OKC twice, Jazz, who have one of the best defenses in the league, and then you lose to Pacers and Pistons in blowout style, you can't really get a huge feel for what's going on. But I'd still suspect 45 to 50 wins.
I think that's
like
just
fourth.
I think that's just been like the rule for the league is like you can't really tell what anybody's doing and where they are right now because it's up and down,
Yeah, like I can't see Orlando or Indiana making the playoffs, but I can't tell you that they won't at this stage because they're playing great.
And, Orlando's got some great wins, a win over the Spurs and a win over the Cavs. Like, everything has been so crazy in the past 2 weeks that it's really hard to project. But I tend to agree with you. I still see that, like, maybe 46, maybe 51 if they rip off a really good stretch. But I think go ahead.
I think fans will be unhappy if they're probably 8th seed or lower. I think 4 to 6 is where most fans see them slotting in.
Yeah, and if they get everything together like we talked about, if they can figure out how to rotate and communicate on defense, I don't think that anybody, even the up to and including the Warriors, really would want to see this team in the first round because of how good of a player Karl-Anthony Towns is. I mean, he scares the shit out of people.
Yeah, he's one of the guys, and I think the whole team, when they really get clicking, it's one of the teams where they can beat anyone easily. But it's them game. They're going to have them young games where they slip away and they get beaten by 30 in games where you're like, they should have won that. But it's kind of like bringing that consistent effort every night is what the problem is right now, I think.
Yep, I totally agree with you, and it will be interesting to see how they go on from here. I mean, the Northwest is loaded. There's no way around it. Every team in the Northwest could be a playoff team with Portland, Oklahoma City, Utah, Denver, and Minnesota. Like, that's a rough division to play in.
Yeah, it is, and especially I guess that's what makes them 2 OKC wins so big early in the year is that you look at those division games and you're like, OKC is going to be the hardest one, and they've already won 2 of those. They've beat the Jazz as well, so all 3 of their wins are division wins.
Yeah, and that's huge.
Yeah. So, like you said, it's so hard. Portland Jazz are probably arguably the worst team in it, and you don't want to verse the Jazz, so...
Yeah, there's not... Every single night when I see... I've watched a lot of Northwest matchups, like, just because I see Jazz, Nuggets on the schedule, or I see T-Wolves, Thunder, like, those are always on my league pass, because, like, that division is brutal, night in and night out.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you beat Oklahoma City by 3 the first time and 3 the second time? Is that right?
Yeah, and 3 the first time off a lucky Andrew Wiggins game winner. So, yeah, it's been exciting to watch. And I think it's like you said, because they're in the same division, you look on your league pass, and there's a Northwest game so often, and you're like, you can, pencil it in to be a good game every time.
For sure. So let's change gears for a second. We've talked about the Wolves. I'd like to talk to you for a second about Australian basketball. Like, Australia has been this big country for cricket, rugby, but it seems like basketball is really growing in the past decade plus, including, this is just an interesting stat to throw in there, 3 guys have been picked number 1 since 2005 from Australia. Andrew Bogut, Ben Simmons, and then Kyrie Irving, which you can sort of argue is Australian or not. But that's pretty crazy, for one country that's not the United States to produce that many NBA players. How much has basketball trickled into the everyday lives of Australians?
Yeah, a lot, I think. And I think the number 1 pick's definitely helped. I think Bogut was probably the one who set it off all the way back when, I don't know, 2005,
I think?
Maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, 05. Yeah, he was kind of the one that set it off, I think, because he was the number 1 pick and we'd never had one before, and everyone, the ESPN Australia started accommodating the NBA on the TV so much more. And then since then, it's just every year it grows, and Simmons this year, like, every single Philly game is on TV in Australia.
Really?
Every single one. Like, there was the same as Utah when Exum got drafted at the start. Like, they really accommodate to your Australian players. Milwaukee play a lot because of Dellavedova, and Cleveland, when Delly was playing for Cleveland, he would be like the center of the ad instead of LeBron.
That's so wild.
Yeah, so it's kind of like they really use these Aussie players to bring hope to the game. And I've loved the NBA since I was 7-8 years old, and I know people who have, so it's always been around. It's just now it's kind of, like you said, trickling into the everyday lives. You see it on Facebook all the time, and you kind of see the ads on TV all the time. So it's definitely getting more popular.
And I think, a lot of it is a generational thing too. I know people who are older than us didn't watch as much NBA because it wasn't as accessible. But now, all across the world, it's become such an accessible product that people, 30 and under really take to the league because you can watch a great game any given night. And I think that's true in Australia, it seems like, as well.
Yeah, well, a lot of my friends, probably over the last 2-3 years have started getting the league pass for themselves, and it's still more expensive here than over there. I think it's about $350 a year.
Yeah.
Here, so it's not cheap, but it's it's worth it in the end because it's kind of the best way to see, the NBA. And if it's people are just trying to watch for the Aussies, I guess they can stay on just the TV. But it kind of goes from people watch Bogut or they watch Mills and then they're like, oh, I love this guy too, and they start watching their actual team instead of just watching for the Aussies, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's not an Australian player on the Timberwolves. I mean, I know you've been a Timberwolves fan for longer than that, but you're watching a team that you like. That's not necessarily a team that has to do with your nationality.
Yeah, and I'll always watch the Aussies play when I get a chance, but it's kind of like you start with watching the Aussies and it turns into just a love for the game in general, and I think that's the key really, because you want as many young Australians watching NBA as possible and playing basketball as possible. So
for sure, because right now there are 9 active Australians on NBA rosters. We're talking about a country of like 24 million people with 9 active NBA players, and we're seeing more guys coming yearly. And some guys are like Thonmaker, are guys who came out of the South Sudan and moved to one place, moved to another. And there have been a couple of guys who've gone to Australia like that, but. Is Australia becoming one of those pipelines like the Balkans was in the 90s where you just kept getting Serbian players? Do you see that kind of growth in Australia?
I think so. I think it's definitely growing, and I think like your Thon Makers and your Ben Simmons, if they can play, like anytime we get a really good player, because Australians will get around any kind of player. We'll get around Daly, who's playing in 12 minutes off Milwaukee's bench. But the stars are what's going to push people to really play and to really aspire to be like them, I guess. And when you got Ben Simmons putting up LeBron numbers in his first 10 games, it's easy for kind of people to get behind him and want to be Ben Simmons, I guess.
Oh, for sure. And do you see like a growth in the number of kids playing basketball? I mean, are a lot more kids playing basketball than maybe cricket or rugby or soccer or other sports that have been larger in Australia in years past?
Yeah, definitely. I coach an under-14s team, and this year I had to get my mate to coach the 2s.
Wow.
Because we had too many kids. Normally I can fill one team and I might have 8-9 players some years, and this year we had 25, and we had 2 12, 13-man rosters. So you can definitely see the improvement in the younger kids, and that's where you want it to come from. I think it's always been good numbers for the 18 to 25-year-olds who are playing in the senior basketball, but it's the 12-year-olds, the 10-year-olds that you want to come through.
Yeah, and that's where you really start the growth as a country, is starting to develop kids at 12 years old.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you can kind of install good basketball ethics into them early and that kind of teach them the love for the game, then they can become, I guess, like me, but athletic.
Yep.
Because Lord knows I don't have that.
But listen, that's those who can't do coach. Like that, I've been through that same thing. I've been coaching for years.
Definitely.
We can't do
just
it.
Just teach them my knowledge and not my poor play.
Exactly. We can show you how to do it, and then you do it because you're better than we are.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of shown up like in the past few years, in the past few Olympics. Like Australia's starting to mount these more impressive performances every Olympic Games. It seems like, because they've got more guys playing in the NBA, and that makes more people want to play, and it's just this huge snowball effect. Yeah, and I think we've got to really, like, a lot of the NBA players, the Australian NBA players, have that same kind of style, that gritty, defensive-minded style, and I think that kind of translates, to our national team. I think you got Bogut and Dellavedova, Baines, who's been really good this year. I was going to say my man Aaron Baines, for sure.
Yeah, he's been really good this year, and then Joe Ingles, who I think is a really talented player. Joe Ingles, I've been watching him since it was 18, 19 in Australia, and I've always thought he was an NBA caliber player.
And I think like this sort of speaks to the growth of the nation and just sort of that development as players, and that comes from the next thing, the growth of the National Basketball League in Australia. Teams have come over. I think Melbourne came and played Oklahoma City this year. Like, there have been a lot of teams coming over to play, and How much have you seen of the growth in the league and the competitiveness from year to year?
It's definitely gotten bigger. I think between maybe 2011, 2014, it went bust completely, and it was really big before that. Like I went to games when I was young all the time, and then I think they like lost a TV deal, and it kind of went under for a bit. And then 2015 they came roaring back, and made it bigger than ever, and got a lot of sponsors around it. And now it's really boomed in Australia. Like I'm a Melbourne United member myself, so
That's
and
very,
it's
very
become
cool.
it's become a really popular place, I guess, for those fringe NBA players to come and play. Like some would go to China or the D League. I think Australia has become one of them places, and I think the more imports like that you get, the better the quality is of the game.
And well, Terrence Ferguson played instead of playing in
Yeah.
college last year, played for Adelaide, right?
Yeah, I was about to mention him. Yeah, Ferguson. I think instead of like how players kind of go to China to make a bit of money in their college year, he came over to Australia, played for Adelaide. Didn't even play massive minutes still, I think, but still enough to impress scouts and keep his name in that NBA, rotation.
I'm so impressed. Just as that, when you think about it, America has 300 million people, and so
Yeah.
produce a ton of good basketball players. But when you think about a population as small as Australia, 24 million people, to produce a Joe Ingles, an Aaron Baines, and then to go up the list to an Andrew Bogut, a Dante Exum, a Ben Simmons, a Patty Mills,
Yeah.
like that's a lot of talent for a country that small
Yeah.
in terms of population.
Yeah, and I think it's a variety of talent too, which I think is what's exciting. Is there's your Mills, who's your 3-point shooter, then there's your big point guard Simmons, and your big strong tough guys like Bogut and Baines. So I guess it's kind of an idol almost for every Australian kid, because no matter what your size or your skill, there's someone in the NBA from Australia that's
Yeah, for sure. And Australia just moved into the Asia bracket of FIBA, and they start play pretty soon. But I mean, like with all these guys, the qualifying starts, I think, in the summer of next year to go to the FIBA World Cup in 2019. But
Yeah.
it will be interesting to see like these younger Australian guys, like Dante Exum has had stretches where he has been phenomenal playing for the Jazz.
yeah.
And Ben Simmons has obviously just been impressive every single day of his short career. It'll be really interesting
Yeah.
to see these guys get on the court and see Australia compete, because I think they've got a damn good roster right now.
Yeah, I think that definitely by the World Championships and by the next Olympics as well, I think Australia should have a team that really should compete for at least bronze or silver. Like I think obviously you can't really compare them to the US, but in terms of Spain and France, Argentina, teams like that who seem to sneak a medal every year, I think Australia should definitely be talked about in that same conversation.
For sure, and that will be really something to keep an eye on. Is there anything else you want to let us know about Australian basketball? I mean, it's always fun to just talk about how the game is growing all over the world.
Not really. I mean, I have here. I think the only difference almost between the NBA and Australia, obviously, there's a lot of differences between the NBL and the NBA, but I think what really sets it apart is the athleticism. I think when you watch the NBL, you can see they'd shoot, I reckon, 10, 15 more 3-pointers a game in the NBL, because they can't get to the ring like they do in the NBA, and that first step isn't a lightning quick first step of a 6'9" small forward,
Right.
So I think that's what I notice when I'm watching in the NBL, is that they can all shoot, they can all dribble and have really good skills. It's just that they don't have that athleticism that's ever going to push it to a top league like the NBA, I guess. But when the players do come through with that athleticism, they're the players that you're going to see in the NBA.
For sure, and I think a lot of the Australian guys will keep coming over. Bogut played at Utah, Simmons played at LSU, so the U.S. is kind of stealing that top level of talent away from Australia early on in the game. Getting them to come to college in America.
Yeah, and I don't know how Australians think about that, because I guess we want the best players in the NBL, but we also want our best players playing in the NBA. We want to see them at the highest level in the world and competing on the biggest stage. So I guess you could say how much it would be good if Ben Simmons played for Melbourne United, but it wouldn't be very fun watching him score 50 points a game when you knew he could be playing in the NBA.
I mean, listen, his year at LSU was not impressive at all, so I think he might have been as well off playing for Melbourne. Well, Jake, tell us what you're working on for the 94 Feet Report, or for Dunking with the Wolves. Like, tell us what you're working on the next few days so we can know how to find you and how to read what you're writing.
Right now, I am writing a piece for the Dunking with the Wolves. I'm writing my power rankings, which I write weekly power rankings for the Wolves. So go and check them out if you're on my Twitter. So at Jake Paynting again was my handle. You'll find all my shameless self-promotion there. And yeah, so I'll have weekly pieces for Dunking with the Wolves, and then I do a weekly piece or two for the 94 Feet Report. And this week I'm working on a Zach LaVine piece, which is a bit strange because I normally don't do any sort of Wolves-related writing for that, but Zach LaVine, I guess, is Wolves-related still. So yeah, I'm just to see, I guess, a piece about whether LaVine can become that franchise player that I guess Bulls fans are praying that he does.
I was going to say that Bulls fans hope and pray that he's going to be when it looks like they gave away way too much in that Butler trade.
Yeah, I was pretty happy, boy, when I looked down at my phone and seen that had happened.
That pick swap, oh man, that's like this whole other podcast. We'll get into that one day, I promise. Jeez, that whole Chicago Bulls, every time I look at their roster, it just makes me sad. Well, anyway, Jake, appreciate you staying up late with us, man, and it's late for you, but early for us. Appreciate you coming on the show and being super flexible in terms of time, man. Appreciate that.
No, that's fine. I appreciate the invitation, and I've had a very good time, so I hope to do it again one day.
You will for sure be coming back and talking with us, particularly as the season progresses and the Timberwolves get better and better. We'll have you back, and you can walk us through how they've grown as a unit.
Yes, well, I hope it's that, not how they've regressed and what to fix them.
Again, special thanks to my guest Jake Paynting for joining us all the way from Australia. It was nice to have him come on and talk Timberwolves with us, talk a little Australian basketball with us, and we'll definitely have him back throughout the season. Make sure you're following me on Twitter at AlexWestNBA. You're following the show on Twitter at And1Analytics. And make sure to check the 94 Feet Report. You can find things that I've written. You can find things that Jake's written. You can find things that several other great writers are writing all the time for your NBA daily needs. So make sure and check out 94feetreport.com. Until next time, I'm your host, Alex West. Have a good night.